let's get into some of our negative thoughts with the port. And this is going to be the port itself. We'll talk later about Final Fantasy VIII, the game. But let's get into our negative thoughts, and then we can transition into our positive thoughts. But Eric, as far as the port goes, do you have any negative thoughts of the version that you played, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I mean, it's just exactly how you describe it. It's like there's no analog support. Like, I thought it was really funny. I'm like, wait, why is Squall just like not running in a circle like I want him to? And then it turns out, I find out that the PC version didn't have this kind of support. And I don't know. The thing is so it is very bare bones, the port, besides like the graphical update and the music HD remaster. The game is so bare bones that like there isn't anything really special to say about it. It's just Final Fantasy VIII, except you can play it on your Switch. And right. I kind of find that a negative in itself because they didn't really do much to do it to the HD remaster. They didn't even bother trying to do some balancing to make the junction system work, or maybe do some refining to the past mechanics. And I guess maybe that's a double-edged sword. And like, if you fix it, people are going to hate it because they just want to play how it was originally, or either that. But me personally, I would have liked that they at least attempted to try something. Of course, I've always been against the mods in the game. This one's not too bad. But yes, there is an instant win button I saw in here. Now, granted, if I want to be a little hypocritical, I did use that X3 mod to
plow through the game.
Not plow through the game, but like if there's like long segments or something, I may turn it on just to get through it quickly, or if I want to do draw magic grinding, I can. But then they got another button where the ATB cast bar is always ready. And always your limit breaks are always active. And every time you get hit, your HP is restored right back to it. So it is essentially a win button if you don't want to play the game, which I've talked about it in the past. But I've always been against that type of thing. I'm all for more convenient stuff like that.
Did you
like
use it?
×3? No.
No. Okay, so you stuck to your guns on this playthrough.
Well, here's the thing with Final Fantasy. I know we'll get into it, but just a little quick note. Final Fantasy VIII is an easy game. And the game is so hard to not break. Like you put like the latest cure on your HP, and put like the latest and then put all your spells like in attack. It's like everything in the game is so easy. And if you know the siege ranks, like you can get so you didn't feel obligated. Money. You didn't feel it was necessary to use the instant win, all 99 of every single spell. There's no need for it.
Yeah.
I mean, unless like you really don't know how to make the junction system work. Which this is like my 5th playthrough of like Final Fantasy VIII. So I know exactly how the system works. And I tried my best to not exploit anything, but the game is just so easy to break that you have to put effort into not breaking it.
Well, was there, as far as the port goes, did you have any other irritations with it?
Sorry, that's me doing it on a tangent. But no, there isn't really much negative to say about it overall. I mean, there is no 16:9 support for the HD remaster, but I kind of thought that was a given because they haven't done it for they didn't do it for 7, and they kind of did it for 9 on the tablets, but not so much on the Switch version. I believe that's 4x3 also. So I think it's just a lazy port. It's a serviceable port, but I think it's a lazy port.
Yeah. Dan, how'd you feel about the port?
Pretty much the same. Yeah. It's, I mean, it's okay. In terms of content that they added, the ×3 fast forward feature is very useful, because drawing the magic from the enemies is just such a chore. Like I'm the type of player that when I draw a spell and it's new, right? So all my characters have none of it. You see like the question mark. You don't know what spell it's going to get you. I draw it and I will use that battle to get 100. Like I want to just max those out as fast as possible. And so I just hit ×3 and I just keep drawing from the enemy because they don't, at least very early in the game, they don't do enough damage to really have much of a threat like the regular enemies,
Right.
And something I will say about the ×3 is in the past when I've used those fast forward features, they speed up everything about the game, including the music, right? Which is really obnoxious because then the music will, it'll be really fast and you can't even tell, like it doesn't sound the same. That's not the case here. So it only speeds up the gameplay and you can listen to the music at the normal rate.
Yeah,
at the normal tempo.
I'm really happy they did that because, if you do it in an emulator or something like that, it definitely will speed up the music too. And you're like, oh, this isn't what I wanted.
It's really obnoxious to listen to that. Yeah. So then I like turn it down or mute it like when I have it on fast forward. And then I'm like, lowering the sound and then like speeding up. And then, okay, I don't want to speed up anymore. Now I can turn the music back up.
And I'll say about the ×3 also is that, just a quick note, is that if you're like at a part of a game where you have the timer, like when you're going in to fight Ifrit or the timer like to run away from the robot and delete, like if you put the X3 on, the timer doesn't go X3. So that's kind of like a little other easy mode thing.
Oh, it doesn't really?
Yeah, the timer doesn't go faster. But anyways, I'm sorry, Hat, continue.
Well, I was going to say, I didn't even notice that. It was a good point. But I was going to say one thing I did like about it, and I pretty much played the game without it for some reason. So, but if you leave it on, you don't have to worry about turning it off for like cutscenes. It'll automatically switch off for cutscenes and then switch back on. So I thought that was a nice touch too, because the last thing you want to worry about is like, oh crap, is there a cutscene coming up? And constantly have to worry about that. So
yeah, so that's probably the biggest positive of the port. Well, actually, the two things: the better character models, right?
Yeah, they look great.
This is the best they've ever looked in any version of FF8, basically.
Squall is, in fact, the most handsome guy there.
The best looking guy there, yeah.
Well,
and then two, that ×3 feature is like implemented as well as any fast forward feature can be, I think.
Yeah. There are a lot of, I think, some good positives with this port, but I did have like one or two negatives that we didn't bring up. Well, we kind of touched on, but obviously the pre-rendered backgrounds are not upscaled in this. In this port. I've kind of gotten used to it the longer I've played, where it's not as obnoxious, but I do feel in the beginning of the game, it's very, very jarring, especially since like some of the NPCs, Square would try to draw into the back of the pre-rendered background to, keep performance up because there'd be a lot of NPCs on the screen. So they wouldn't be able to upscale or, HD remaster basically those NPCs. So, it's you'll have all these like high def characters and suddenly there's this one guy that looks like his head was stuck in a blender.
Oh, they did that to Headmaster Sid and Balam Garden.
Yeah.
Like there's like when like during the seed exam, there's like 3 like upscaled NPCs and then like he's in the group with them. And he's pre-rendered. I'm like, wait, what the hell?
Yeah,
I'm like, did they seriously use like pre-rendered NPCs back then?
That one is especially jarring. Sorry, that one is especially jarring because the scene right before that, you see his new model standing in the same place.
Yeah, so they had a model to use.
But then it changes to the next scene, and then you come back and he's part of the background.
Yeah, and I didn't understand why they did that because. Like it wasn't. I know I saw this video on Final Fantasy X, for example, where they talked about doing that, where they would draw the characters into the background to try to cheat the PlayStation 2, so they could have like what seemed like hundreds of NPCs, but they weren't actually moving, right? But you could go up and talk to them. But like in that particular scene that we're talking about with Headmaster Sid, there's like 3 NPCs on the screen. So like there was no reason for them to do that. And that's not a criticism of the port. That's just of the original game. But
you're going to notice it again big time when you get to the Balan versus Galbadia battle, and there's a scene where Zell is at the quad and he's like trying to rally the students there, and they're like all lined up in front of him. Every single one of them are pre-rendered NPCs, and it's so jarring that it's like, ugh. It's like it's so bad looking.
Yeah,
like I understand what it is, but like it just looks so weird seeing Zell, who is the only actual NPC there, like talking to all these like pretty much these blurred figures at this point.
Well, and
they're all like lined up in an army group.
Yeah, it can be very jarring to take you out of the game. And what I do understand, I know there's the whole artificial intelligence that'll automatically upscale the backgrounds. For whatever reason, Square doesn't want to do that at this point. So I understand if they're not going to do that, why they're not individually touching up every single screen because of the amount of time that would take. But I would think that those moments with, NPCs that are drawn into the background like that, those instances are rare enough to where I think that they could touch just that up, fix instances like that up where it wouldn't cost them a fortune. And it's one of those things where it's rare enough to where I think they could afford it, but it's common enough for you to notice, right? If it had just been one thing, then, it wouldn't be really much of a big deal. But one other thing I noticed too is in the overworld, because they're not really using pre-rendered backgrounds, they are able to make that all HD, but you'll see things like you're not supposed to, right? It's kind of like when you watch an old movie on a high def television, you can suddenly see like a zipper on the monster suit. It's like, you can see all the like lines where like the grass would like meet up, or, you look at the wave animation on the beach and it's just 3 frames. And you can okay, well, there's the out, frame, there's the end frame, and there's the middle frame.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I've seen that on the world map. It's just like all these like circle and like these squares for like where the locations and everything.
Yeah,
like they didn't even remotely attempt to touch up on that.
Yeah, so it's just, it makes me feel like this was kind of like they obviously focused on the characters and the NPCs. But I wish they had touched that up. And I think, Eric, you touched on this briefly, but it would have been cool if they offered some other modes like they did with Final Fantasy 10 and 12, where there was basically a hard mode and maybe some like orchestrated music for give you an option to listen to a different form of the music. That would have been cool also. But, what are you going to expect? They didn't do that with 9 or 7, so they're probably not going to do all that. But
yeah, like I said, it's a bare minimum port besides the some of the other things like the character models. Really, the character models and the soundtrack are really the only thing they went out of their way.
Yeah, I mean,
and besides that, it feels almost like a straight port of the PC version.
I mean, and if like to tack on, because we're basically like just positives here, is I have to give them credit. Like the HD characters look really good, like we've been saying, but I don't want to say every NPC because there's clearly those NPCs that are stuck in the background. But I would say a surprisingly overwhelming majority of the NPCs are HD in this port. Whereas in other games like Final Fantasy X, they kind of only like touched up like the main cast and then like the major players in the story, like Seymour. But like the shopkeeper wouldn't be upscaled, right? So, or they wouldn't be touched up. So it'd be like very like 2 different games almost. But this version, like even like random NPCs running around the garden and stuff, they're touched up. So I think that's like a major like plus. They definitely put some work in on that front, which is definitely, appreciated, I think.
They look really good. I mean, kudos to them for going out of the way with that aspect, because there are details on these characters I've never noticed before until like these HD models came. Like all the features on Edia, Sorcerer's Edia, is just like it all looks so good. And there's like features of like Adele also, and even just I don't know I'm trying to think of, but I mean. Just if you go back to each of these characters, it's just like they look they look so ridiculously good now.
Yeah. I owned not the old back in the day PC version, but the Steam version. I bought that like 2 years ago, and then I did all the mods to the game. And you can have a similar effect where, the characters will be all upgraded and everything and be all super, super realistic. And they'll actually upgrade the background, like the world map and everything too. And it looks really good. But one thing I noticed with this version is that the animations, like not only are the HD characters look great, but the battle animations and everything, they're really smooth and fluid and just like really, really well done. Whereas, yeah, you could go mod it, but a lot of times those are people doing it in their spare time, and you can't really complain that, Squall walks like Frankenstein or anything like that. Like it's just across the board smooth. So major plus for that.
Yeah, there's little small details like that, like Squall's like pants don't look really detailed still.
Yeah.
They still look kind of flat, but I will tell you this, what does look really good? Now, GFs already looked pretty good in Final Fantasy VIII. I would say they were like the best looking thing in the game graphically, and they look even better in this game.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think Siren looked really good too. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I totally agree. Like the summons, the GFs, they look phenomenal. So it's, I really like the HD font. That's really, really good. As before, it was kind of not HD, I guess you could say. So the font's really good. So no music bugs. The music picks up where it left off after a battle. So
yeah.
And you know why it doesn't look why it doesn't look as grating like in Final Fantasy IX, the UI, like text and everything, because this game isn't based off of mobile.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so it doesn't use, like in Final Fantasy IX, they have the big like obvious buttons for you to like touch. And like, but it's on a PlayStation 4. And you're like, I can't touch my TV. Why is the fight button so massive, or on the menu? Yeah, so it uses the regular PlayStation or original PlayStation UI. So that's cool. So, but what you guys think about the Final Fantasy VIII in general now that you've been playing it again?
I mean, I still really like the game. I still think the story is good. I like the characters mostly, some more than others, but I can definitely tell now after playing through games like Final Fantasy 13 and Final Fantasy 10 that like you can tell which team is writing which Final Fantasy, and the people who made those games are clearly some of the ones who did Final Fantasy 8. Because as much as I like the game, like I said, I'd still recommend it all day to anyone. There are some really bad and awkward writing moments in the game that really make me cringe sometimes, like especially when someone like Zell or Renoa says something like it. Just to me, it's like I'm thinking in my head, this is just something human beings don't say to each other. And granted, now JRPGs are pretty famous for that. But like in the realm of Final Fantasy, like these games like 8 and 13, and to a small extent FF10, like these are just things people don't say to each other, and it just immediately takes you out of it.
See, on that note, it's kind of, I've been in the middle on that, because there are times where I feel like the dialogue is very believable and it feels very natural, and I'm almost kind of impressed. I'm like, why don't I think of this when I think about this game? But then you'll see moments like you're talking about where it's just like so bad. Like you're like,
that's why.
right? This sticks out my mind more so. But it does have moments where it's like very, very natural. Like I totally forgot, but in the beginning of the game, I love how Squall and Renoa don't get along, and like he's basically just constantly like like making fun of her almost, like you're not taking this seriously. You jump down on the floor and you start planning, your next attack on the army, like this isn't a game, like, and it feels very natural for his role that he's like in the military basically. But then, yeah, Eric, there's those moments like you're talking about where you're just like, this is stupid.
I can give a specific example. The scene where Renoa and Squall go into the Ragnarok after he saves her out in space. And like they're having that like romantic
Spoilers,
scene
by
with
the
like
way.
eyes on me in the back.
Yeah.
And she makes like a comment like I used to like when she gets in Squall's like arms and he's all like with her on there, and she's like, my mother used to always hold me like this, and my father used to also, but not anymore. I'm like,
dude, I don't know, man. But you know,
if you're trying to go for the win here, Renoa, you might want to leave that part out.
Yeah. Well, especially, since Squall's only mother he knows is kind of, had her issues. So that's the thing, though. Like, I feel like one thing I didn't notice with this game, or that I forgot about, was like you have awkward moments like that, but there's other times where like the humor is just, I feel like they just nail it. It's kind of weird, but I can think of an example when Irvine first joins your party and he says, like, he tries to be a ladies' man. He's like, all right, so Renoa and Selfie are going to come with me. And they say, is that okay? And I wasn't paying attention at first, and I just clicked yes by accident. And then Renoa and Selfie got upset, like, what do you mean that's okay? And then like Renoa's like, you know what, fine. And then she grabs like Irving's arm and she's like, I'll go with you. And then Selfie's like, no, you go with me. Right. And they're like fighting over him. And then it's just like super awkward. And Quistis is sitting there next to Squall, and she just grabs his arm and she's like, oh, Squall. And like, I just started like bursting out laughing because it was so freaking awkward, but like, I felt like it was supposed to be awkward and funny. I mean, this game has some like hilarious moments that I feel like I totally forgot about. It's just it makes me laugh.
I thought Quistis constantly interrupting Squall when he's talking. Like, I'll be like, woman, shut it. Like, can I speak?
Yeah.
Like, I get it. I'm predictable.
Yeah. It's jarring though. I still feel like she should not be 18. I feel that her character is clearly like 30 or 32 or something like that.
That's still one of my biggest complaints about this game.
Really?
Yeah.
Just the ages?
None of the characters look their age. They all look like they're in their mid-20s.
They look a little younger with these new models, I think.
Yeah, still doesn't cut it. They still look like they're in their mid-20s. And the way they act is in their mid-20s. Why does Sid, who made Squall, who's been a seed for about a week, the leader of the of all the seeds in Balam Garden, like after a week of like being a seed member, and then like, okay, you're 17, you have no experience, you're a very introverted man who doesn't like to interact with people, but you're good with a gun blade, so you should be the leader. So it's like, this is what I get for being a main character.
so much responsibility. Yeah, that is one thing I didn't really think about, but where are all the like veteran seed members? Like, why am I the most experienced person here besides, like one person? It is a little strange, but I didn't.
And then Quistis is a year older and she's an instructor to everyone.
She seems so much more mature.
Yeah. But that's because she's a year older, Hat.
Oh,
she's a mature one.
Sometimes a year, you learn a lot in that year.
Yeah.
I don't know. One thing I didn't notice back when I think I noticed when I was a kid, I just never paid attention to it. I was just impressed. But like the seamless transitions between FMVs and like actual gameplay, like they go over the top with this and it's awesome. Like, there's one example I can think of when you're at the communication tower and the invasion to Dalet. You're talking with the Galbadian officer there, and then you're in like regular gameplay models. A wrench drops and it's a regular wrench in gameplay. And then it falls through a crack and the camera goes down. And when it goes down and looks through a crack, suddenly you're in like a super detailed FMV of like this wrench falling all the way down this tower. And it's like, clearly that's not what it looks like on the 3D model of the game, right? There's no way that they could render that in live gameplay, but they just like, it just fades into that so seamlessly. And there's so many camera shots where they do that, where they're just basically showing off like, hey, look at what we can do. It's really, really cool. This was a very impressive looking game back in the day.
Oh yeah, the CG is really nice. I mean, if I want to complain about the game more, I feel like some of the supporting characters don't get enough spotlight. Like, we don't get much into Zell or Selfie. I mean, we have the moment with Selfie when Trivia Garden gets blown up, but we don't really explore that enough. And then we have Quistis, who's questioning herself as like instructor, and she gets like they tell her to quit her job as an instructor, and she does. We don't really see much of that, or her feelings for Squall.
It's
the game, but we got a little bit with Irvine when he was getting the jitters for having to assassinate the sorceress. But the most character death we get is from Squall and Renoa.
Yeah, everyone else is pretty much there just to support Squall and Renoa. It seems like this game is definitely highly focused on them. But Stan, you're being a little quiet over there, but what did you think? I know you said it's been a long time since you've played this game.
Yeah, this is actually only the second time that I've ever played it. And the first time was back on the PS1, shortly after it came out. Yeah. So
20 years.
Yeah. I did not like it back then much at all. And
is it shaping up to be a better experience now for you?
I am not far enough really into the game. I'm about 6 hours into it to say definitively. But yeah, I remember not liking the cast very much, and that opinion hasn't changed, but I haven't even recruited everybody yet and gone through. So I have a ways to go before I can make a final opinion on that. The junction system, however, seems just as flawed as I remember it all those years ago. So yeah, but I mean, presentation wise, game is very good, like you were saying. Yeah. Especially compared to what was out at the time. So yeah, so I would say my general impressions are slightly more negative than most people, but
we'll see what happens.
We'll see. Yeah, I need to finish it first before I can say for sure.
I don't mean to be so negative towards it, because I actually do like it. Like, there's good scenes. Like, I do like the relationship buildup between Squall and Renoa. It's not just like an instant, oh, I love you. We get along on the way. It's kind of like, there's kind of like what's it called, like bickering on the way. And just like eventually you just see like over time, like Squall's just like not just hiding his feelings. And I do like how Squall himself is always talking to himself.
Yeah.
Because I feel that I find that very relatable, because I think a ton of stuff in my head, and then then once in a while I'll say what I'm thinking.
One scene I liked about that on that point is there was a scene where you're told that Cypher's been executed, and obviously he hasn't, but everyone in your party is talking about Cypher, and they're like, I like the guy, or I didn't like the guy, but I didn't want him to be executed. And then they start talking about, well, he was kind of troubled and all this other stuff. And inside of Squall's mind, you're reading his thoughts, and he's talking about, is this what people are going to be like if I die? Like, is this what people are going to say about me? I don't want people to say this stuff about me. And like, it's just like, it's little driblets like that throughout the game that I think really help flesh out his character and kind of give you a glimpse into the main character that you don't normally get in a lot of RPGs. So I really like that they did that.
Yeah. And now that we speak of Cypher, can I talk about how much I don't like Cypher? or how misused he is.
Okay.
Okay, so he has been nothing. Like after he betrays everyone and becomes a sorcerer's knight, he becomes nothing but a punching bag the entire game. Like even at the point where he is leading the whole Galbadia army in Lunatic Pandora, he is still so pathetic as a person. Like it doesn't feel like he has a threatening presence. Like he's just like that person that comes in once in a while to want to cause trouble. Like you remember that Zaz guy from Tales of Vesperia, whatever, the crazy one.
Yes.
It's like kind of like that. He comes in once in a while and like you just brush him off to the side and then you go back to playing the game again. And like they even try to have these scenes with like Raijin and Fujin like talking to him. It's like Cypher was supposed to be such a big part of this game. It's like why isn't he like more of a threat to the party? Why isn't there more personal conflict with like him and Squall and Renoa? Like they kind of were going off like there's going to be some kind of love triangle type of deal because she used to have feelings for Cypher, but you know after he became like evil, then she was like, oh, never mind, I don't like him anymore, and they just completely dropped that.
Yeah.
And the thing that gets me the most is after you beat the game, there is a one of the CG scenes is Cypher just having a fun time fishing with Raijin and Fujin, and I'm like, did I miss something? Like he learned nothing. Like he pushed Renoa into Adele, and then you never hear from Cypher again until that CG scene, unless I'm missing a scene and someone can point it out to me.
I think the idea is that he's no longer being influenced or anything like that. But I mean, I think a lot of the like issues with the game that I have are kind of surrounding things that you're bringing up with Cypher is that, you know, they tried to push this game out in a year and a half after Final Fantasy VII. So a lot of it feels rushed, but my general feelings of the game as a whole, like the story and everything like that, is that the disc 1 is phenomenal. And then I feel like I really like disc 4 as well. I feel like the game has a strong start and then a strong finish. And then disc 2 and 3, it's just this roller coaster of awkwardness and really good moments and then awkward again and really good moments. And I just think that a lot of that just comes down to the fact that they were just rushing development of the game.
I think you just put it perfectly. It's like there's a bunch of awkward moments in between and some character elements that they just never went completely through with. But the stuff they did go through with, I thought was really good.
Yeah. If I could say one thing on the junction system, on this playthrough, I actually am enjoying the junctioning system. Believe it or not, I still think it's very flawed. But I think they should have emphasized junctioning more and de-emphasized leveling. So, okay, your characters can level up, but I think that it should have been very minor upgrades and stats. And maybe they could have tied like limitations on how much magic you can draw in relation to the level. But I definitely think like the drawing system, like there's a lot of things with this, but I think at its core, the junctioning system is a good idea. I just think that it was poorly implemented. It feels like they came up with a good idea, but then they realized there was a way you could break it. So they came up with another loophole where, oh, you don't get enough money to actually buy tents to refine that down into Kirajas an hour into the game. Well, that's because you have to take these CD exams, but then but they keep making all these like safety controls to try to keep you from breaking the game, but it ends up being a very unpleasant game because you can still break it. And now the characters are scaling with you and it de-emphasizes you from or discourages you from using magic in the game because if I use magic, my stats go down. I think they could have come up with a different way of implementing this and still kept the core elements of the junctioning system.
I agree. I think what they could have done is that based on your level, that you can only get the stats on your junction system so high. So like if you're like level 10, you can only go up by a certain number.
It would just be a small boost.
So it would give you a slight edge in battle, but it wouldn't make or break the battles. I think they should have just done something like that. I think it would have been okay to cap. So if you had things like Curagas, it's like, well, okay, you got them, but you can't really utilize them till level 30. So you might as well use these other magics until you get to a point where you can use that.
Yeah. Well, I think, see, I agree with you. I think they should have done something like that. I still like the idea of the excitement of encountering a new monster and then quickly going to the draw menu to see what new spell they're going to let me learn. So I think I would want to keep that part in the battle system. But I think that once you learn a spell, they should just let you cast the magic and use MP. And I think that you should just get like magic stones or something after the battle. I know they already kind of do that, but that should just be how you get magic spells. Defeat the monster. Okay, you got 8 Thundera stones. Okay, you can charge up your spells, or you can charge up your equipment or whatever. This whole like, I got Thundegas. It's exciting, but I can't use them because that's attached to my strength. And that's going to make my attack go down, or that's going to make my HP go down. Or if I give magic to another character, suddenly my HP goes down to like 1,000 when it was at 5,000. And it's just, I
never used magic either, just because of that, because I might want to use it for stats.
Yeah. So I just was like attacking and using summons the entire game. So it's just, it could have been so good, but they just, I know they didn't have enough time.
Our good friend Ian, I was listening to him talk earlier today, and I think he actually put it best, is that the junction system by itself is great. The monster leveling with you system is great, but they don't work great together.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. The leveling
the systems individually are really neat ideas.
Yeah, the leveling with you, scaling with you, that's frustrating for obvious reasons. And then using your magic to make your stats go down, that's frustrating. Endlessly drawing is frustrating. If you don't defeat enough monsters, your seed rank will go down. So then, you don't get paid as much money. So like that's frustrating. So it's just like, this game is so good in so many ways, but just it's missing some core elements to really make it spectacular. But I'm really enjoying it.
Some people tell me it's like, oh, well, you don't have to do that. You can do this and make it more challenging for yourself. And I think like it's not my responsibility to balance out this game. It's the developer's responsibility to balance it out. So, well, I don't really like hearing the excuse of like, oh, well, just limit yourself. And, it's a lot more fun. It's like, I don't want to have to think about that. Yeah.
Well, I still kind of derive enjoyment from the fact that I can break the game. It does take a little bit of work to do, but I was talking with one massive FF8 fan, and he was telling me, he was kind of combating me on this, that, you can break other Final Fantasy games, like Final Fantasy VII, for example. You could just master all the materia. And I'm like, yeah, but that takes like 40 hours to do. That's not something you could do in 2 hours.
Hey, guess what? Any video game, any RPG, you can level up to 100 and plow through the entire game. If you just kill a bunch of goblins at the main start field, you eventually get a level 100. Then the rest of the game is just so easy. But, good job spending 70 hours doing that.
Yeah. So obviously there's a lot of things they can do, but anyways, so the music's great. I really like the music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the music's good.
I really like the weapon upgrading system. I do like, you do have to find the right crafting items for it. But once you do, like each weapon upgrade is very significant, and it's like a lot of oomph to it.
Yeah.
And plus the weapons themselves look really good. The Lionheart weapon from Squall is a really awesome looking weapon. And it's like really satisfying to get that.
Yeah, I agree. So in a nutshell, I know that not all of us, I haven't completed this version of the game. I'm like 16 hours in or something like that. So I'm pretty good into it. I know, Eric, you said you're pretty much at the end, and then Stan, you're about 6 hours in. But knowing what we've experienced on the Switch, with the Switch version, what do you all think? Would you recommend this game to someone to play this game on the Switch, this version? You would recommend it? Okay. Stan, would you? Or you want to elaborate, Eric? Or
I mean, first off, it's $20. It's not that expensive. It is kind of bare minimum, but it is still Final Fantasy VIII. I mean, it's still very much more than serviceable port of it. For the little effort they did put in, it is really good. The character models look really good. Like I've been kind of ripping on it the whole time, but that's just because I'm much easier at complaining than I am praising things. So, but there are a lot of good moments in the game, and the stuff like the music and the presentation, the artwork, all this type of stuff, like beautifully complements these moments. And because of that, it's like I think the game is more than worth your time. Yeah. It's a flawed gem, to put it nicely.
Stan, knowing what you know now, would you recommend this version, or would you suggest people go play it a different way?
I wouldn't suggest they go play it a different way, but I would say if you're a huge FF8 fan and you've been looking forward to this, then absolutely go out and get it. I think the Switch version helps the most with the like the backgrounds not being upscaled and playing it in the portable mode, because it's on a smaller screen, and you still notice it, especially with the issues of the NPCs drawn into the background at certain times. But I can see how it would be a lot more jarring on a larger screen.
Yeah.
Versus the portable screen. So if that is an issue for you, like definitely go with the Switch version, which I think it's at least a little bit of an issue for everyone. But if you're not a big fan of FF8 like me, I don't know if this version is going to do enough to change your mind about the game, the game. But if you want to give it another chance, then I would say wait until someone has modded the PC version to be like the best possible version.
Yeah,
because that's going to happen right now that this version's out. It's just a matter of time. Give it a year or two, right? There will be a mod out for this version, because people are modding the PC versions of the classic Final Fantasy games. Like there's like a lot of good work being done to make those games as good as they can be. So I'm sure this game's going to get the same treatment. And so if you're willing to wait a little bit longer, you can probably get the PC version. First of all, you'll probably be able to get it cheaper than $20 like a year from now or so, right? Pick it up on a summer sale or something. And then there will be mods if you want to get in depth with it that will maybe fix some of these issues with the junctions, or add a harder difficulty, or upscale the backgrounds using the AI that we've seen with Final Fantasy IX. Like, so there's two thoughts. There's like, if you really got to jump in and play FF8 again, sure, go out and get it. And I would recommend the Switch version. If not, if you're still hesitant, then just keep sitting on the fence and then get the PC version. Yeah. Which will be the best.
I mean, if you're looking for like a brand new type of Final Fantasy VIII experience, I mean, you're not going to get it unless you thought the models were so ugly that you couldn't play it, and now their models are good looking. I mean, this is just Final Fantasy VIII. It's not like
orchestrated soundtrack
yeah. Like you're not getting something necessarily enhanced besides the character models.
Yeah, so, like I don't think it's as significant of a improvement as, say, Final Fantasy X, which added the 10 HD, which added the expert sphere grid that we didn't get in the original North American version, or Final Fantasy 12 that gave you the option of the Zodiac job system
and a hard mode.
And a harder difficulty where you have to go through the game at level 1. There's nothing like that here. It's the same game that you played back then with some bonus features, but there's nothing in there that's going to change the way that the game is played, essentially.
I do want to point out, let me point out real quick that, because I own it, like it's weird that there was already a PC version on Steam that I owned, and I can't remember, but apparently this version is a little bit more substantial than that. I think that PC version was literally just the PC version from 2000. They just plopped it on Steam. So I did install some mods that people made for that, where I was able to get the PlayStation soundtrack, and like, some people were able to like retexturize everything. But like I said, I think it's going to be really popular for people to mod this game with these current HD sprites, because it just looks and fits so much better than having, 37 people mod different parts of the game, over 5 years. It's like, not everything fits, and it's just, so it's going to be really exciting. Go ahead, Eric. I'm sorry.
Oh, I forgot to mention this. Throughout my entire gameplay, I only came across one bug, and it wasn't a serious bug. There was a part when you two will likely come across it when you get to this part. When again, it's the Galbadia versus Balam scene where like they're all fighting each other.
Mm-hmm.
The music that goes on the whole time during that thing got bugged, and it turned to the MIDI version of it.
Oh, really?
So
I haven't
the
gotten to
entire
that part
time
yet.
until that theme finally changed to something else, because that theme stays there for like almost an hour. Like it doesn't change at all.
So it just went
like,
to the MIDI version?
And it turned into the MIDI version.
Oh my God.
But that's the only time it did it. No other point in the game did the soundtrack turn to the MIDI version.
But that's just lazy. That just tells me that somebody didn't complete the port before. They didn't test the full thing. They just tested, portions of it.
That's when I knew I was playing the PC port. When that came up, I'm like, this is the PC port.
I think I agree with you guys. Like, there's better ways to play this game eventually if you wait, I guess. But I'm not sure if I would recommend this version if you've never played Final Fantasy VIII before, like at all, because it is the PC version and you're going to have little issues like that. And the backgrounds don't mesh well. I'm not sure if that would affect your experience or not. I would almost say just go emulate it on your computer, the PlayStation version, and just upscale it and just play it that way. But this wouldn't be a bad way to play it.